This is a tutorial on how to use the calculator to graph regression lines. And to do that, we're going to use the second example from the tutorial on making regression lines. So here we have a table showing the height of a ball over time, as well as its corresponding regression function. Now, one method we could use to graph it on our calculator is pretty straightforward, just like graphing any other function. So if we go to y equals, we could just type the function into our y1. So we have negative 0.13x squared plus 2.04x plus 4.32. And now when we graph, it would be best to have our stat plot on, which you know it's on if the plot up here is highlighted in black. Now for us, we have it in plot 1, so that is the plot that is highlighted. So to make sure that we have a good window to see our regression line, we could just use the zoom stat function. And as you could see, we could see the points from our data table, as well as the regression line that we just put into our y equals. And when we compare the two, they look very similar. And from that, we could see that our regression line represents our data fairly well. Now, if you only want to see the regression line without the points from the stat plot, you could just go to the y equals and turn off the plot that is on by hitting enter on it. And then when we go back to graph, we'll only see the regression line. Now let's take a look at another way we could graph the regression line. So this time, rather than typing in the entire function into our y equals, we could put in this special function called regeq, which represents a regression equation. And to do that, we need to first go to our y equals, and then in whichever y you want, then we push the vars button and scroll down to option number 5, which is statistics. Now after we do that, there's a few tabs here. We want to get over to the EQ tab. So we'll scroll over twice, and that very first option is our regeq. So when we hit enter on that, it automatically puts in the last regression line that we made. And it gives it to us in its complete decimal form. It will not round. So now all we have to do is hit graph. And it'll graph the regression line for us. And it looks like that it's the same thing as what we had before. Now let's look at one more way that we could graph a regression line. Now for this method, I like to refer to it as assigning the regression. Now what I mean by that is you could assign the regression line to a specific y equals as you're making the regression. So for example, we still have our data in the lists. Now what we could do is make the regression. So quadreg, because this is a quadratic function. Now before hitting enter again, we could assign a specific y variable. For example, y1, y2, y3, or any other y variable in our y equals. Now the way that we could get to those y variables is first hit vars, and then there's a tab right here called yvars. Now we'll scroll over to that, and then the first option is function. Now here we see a list of all the y variables, going from 1 through 0, or 1 through 9 and 0. So we could tell it which y variable we want to put it in. For example, if we want to put it in y3, We'll hit enter on that third option. Now when we hit enter, we'll get the regression line, but it'll also automatically put that regression line into our specified y variable. So in this case, we told it to put it into y3, which it did. So now if we clear out y1 and hit graph, we'll see that our y3 graphs the regression line, exactly how all the other ones did. Now you know a few different ways to graph a regression line, and they all pretty much do the same thing, so it's up to you to use whichever method works best in your situation.